You can grab one and pass it around. Here, Joey, here's chapter 9 for anyone who needs. As well, really important, please, that you be on our email list. If you're not, then should something arise where I have to move the class time, etc., it happens, we won't be able to tell you. So please put your info on this. If you haven't been hearing from Maya, if you don't get the weekly reminders, that's going around.
Weekly, but I know she has my...
Okay. And also, for anyone who is intending to come tonight, also please put your name on the class for tonight. That's going to be, if you remember chapter 3, where we very quickly went through all the tree of life and the Sfirot, boom, boom, boom. We're going to take 5 weeks and go through that in some more detail. It's a lot of fun. Impress your friends, whatever. But I think you'll like it. There you go. So if you want to, please sign up for that, and feel free to grab one of these, bring some friends. Those are going around. Is there another pencil in the room somewhere? Is there?
Pass my pen, maybe we'll come back.
Thanks, thanks. So welcome. I don't know if you guys are aware, we just had the most important date in terms of the text that we're reading in the calendar was Monday night, and then Tuesday and Wednesday. Those were the days, if you remember the story, that the author of this book, the Alter Rebbe, like many of the Hasidic and Kabbalistic masters in history, was imprisoned because the Tsar, in this case, didn't like what he was teaching. And it was seen as a heavenly debate on whether this system of Kabbalah, which is so clear to the mind, was a problem, because it had been secret before, it had been hidden. And now, here it is in a format that you and I can sit and learn at Temple Israel and understand with our brain. The heavens felt there was a problem, and that's why he was imprisoned. He was finally released on that date, the 19th and 20th of Kislev, and it was seen as a heavenly vote of confidence that this style of Kabbalah could continue to expand and be shared with the world in a way that you wouldn't have to become a 50-year-old male Jewish master of Torah with all the time in the world to go travel somewhere and learn with a Kabbalist if you want to learn it. But you and I could sit here and learn it in English, openly, and in a way our brains could even understand. So there were celebrations all around, and perhaps more importantly for us, it's a very good time to be learning this. Perhaps some of the conscious effects are empowered, but the superconscious connections are empowered even more on this day. So there's a lot of light coming through that pathway for this book. It's a wonderful day, wonderful week. For anyone who's just joining us, last week we actually went through a quick review of the first 8 chapters. So for anyone who's watching or who's just joining us, it may be good to review just last week's class. It's online, and there you'll get a quick outline of everything we've looked at so far. So we looked at chapter 1, where we learned about 2 souls, and the righteous person, the self-centered person, and this intermediate person, the Beinoni, and that everyone's functioning with 2 souls. Then chapter 2, we looked at the identity of the first soul, the second soul rather, the divine soul, the godly soul, that it's a piece of God, actually a piece of God. Chapter 3, we looked at its anatomy, which is the 10 Sfirot, which we'll look at in the evening class. Chapter 4, we looked at the garments of the divine soul, which is thought, speech, and action. Right? In North America, sometimes what I consider my identity, what I think, do, and say, that's just my clothing in Kabbalah. That's the garments of the divine soul. Thought, speech, and action. You can take them off, you can put them on, etc. Chapter 5, we looked at Torah study as being a beautiful union, unlike any other, with the Ein Sof, that as we're sitting here learning Torah, we're actually, as it were, digesting surrounding light that can't even enter into the universe. An amazing chapter. Then 6, 7, and 8, we looked at the whole structure of this, the first soul, the self-centered soul, the animal soul, that it's a mirror of the divine soul, but that all of its instincts are this way, self-preservation. And we also learned about the structure of the world, which includes holiness and then everything else. Right? So holiness and then the Sitra Achar, the other side. Holiness is something that is still, as it were, nullified to the infinite light. So it recognizes there's a flashlight and I'm just a beam from the flashlight. I'm just flashlight. I'm just beam from a sun. Without the sun, there's no me. Anything that thinks it exists, that thinks it has real identity, that's the other side. Doesn't mean that it's destructive, doesn't mean that it's evil, just it's not subsumed in holiness. And then within that other side, there's several levels. There's 3 levels that are totally physical, as it were, the 3 impure klipot. And then there's klipa noga, which still has some light kind of mixed in with it. And that's what we mostly work with in the Jewish soul pathway, is the klipa noga, right? When you eat a meal according to your own kashrut and with a blessing, etc., now you're taking klipa noga and elevating it, especially when you come to Temple Israel and do something beautiful with that energy, right? Now, that completed the, which was the information section, which was in our user's manual, what sections, what components of our soul and our physical being do what and how they interrelate and what the structure is, including some things I didn't mention, complex systems of soul organs that interface with a complex system of divine light that's flowing down, etc. We call them mitzvot, but they're really soul organs. They're ways of connecting our being to the Ein Sof. And now we moved on in the past 2 or 3 classes to chapter 9, where we begin the application. How do we use this as a technique? And it's a whole new map of how we flow more masterfully in life. So please understand, this has been perceived for many generations as being a technique that can apply to one's whole life, throughout one's life, to continue to be more and more masterful. In chapter 9, first we looked at the headquarters of each of these souls in our being. So please remind me, where is the headquarters of the animal soul in my body? The heart, yeah, the heart. And specifically, where in the heart? Left side, right? Which, okay, we're not dealing with anatomy. We mean the more physical aspect of the heart, the part of the heart that connects the blood to the body. We mean the part of survival that's actually physical, right? My vital energy that wants to survive, that part of my heart. We call it the left. And where's the headquarters of the divine soul? Yes, but primarily where first, before that? The brain, thank you. So the divine soul, it likes the brain, it's headquartered in the brain, it's comfortable in the brain, that's where it lives, that's where it flows into my body primarily. And from there, of course, as we said, it extends into the right part of the heart, the part of the heart that deals with oxygenation, that deals with soul and life force rather than survival life force. And there, they have a stare down, right? Like the North and South Korean border, right? And every 50 years they have, they have lunch on one side or the other, but they just stare each other down, and there's no give and take, right? In this stare down in my heart, there is no, well, let's share powers, you control this, I'll control this, you take a day, I take a day. It's not like that. They each think the other one is bent on self-destruction and wants to completely end us, right? The divine soul thinks the animal soul wants to cut us off from our source, Ein Sof, and that would be suicide. The animal soul thinks the divine soul wants to rise up into our source and end itself and be consumed in that light and thinks that's suicide, and neither will give each other the car keys for a second. Right? It's a battle for every inch. And that's the second part of chapter 9, as we looked at what is happening dynamically in us with these two souls. It is, in fact, a battle. The body is described as a small city, and the souls as two rulers that are waging an actual civil war in the city over who will control the city, who will make the laws, who will direct, who will run the show. As we said, they're not interested in you get that neighborhood, I get this neighborhood. Right? You control the mouth when you're out on the street, I control the mouth when I'm in the home. Right? No. The divine soul wants every aspect that we've learned about of our soul, all of the sfirot, all of the midot, to be flowing according to the divine soul, other-centered actions, and infinite-oriented actions, and also thought, speech, and action to always represent the divine soul. The divine soul always wants to be thinking, speaking, and behaving at every moment. And the animal soul wants the same, and they're fighting it out. And then we looked at what it means, what the divine soul would perceive as the perfect outcome. Right? So the rest of this chapter is dedicated to the vision of the divine soul. And of course, the animal soul is tagged on at the end. If the divine soul were lying on a psychiatrist's couch and the psychiatrist said, "What's the perfect world for you? What do you see as the best outcome?" The divine soul is saying, "Well, I want chokhmah, bina, and da'at of this person to only be responding to me all the time. Every moment of inspiration, everything that would occur to this person is this centered. He's considering other people around me, helping other people, finding a way to connect to the Ein Sof. And then the way they think about it, the way they analyze and categorize, I want that to be only me. And then what they care about in terms of what they thought about. What intellectual ideas would actually cause them to be inspired to love or to fear. I want that to be only about me. And now we're moving to the level of emotions and what the Divine Soul would describe as the perfect outcome in terms of our emotional flows. So I think we're on page 143. It's just at the bottom of the page. There will also be born of this contemplation of love. If somebody next to you is trying to find it, can you help them out? Make sure we're all in the same spot. Yeah? If you don't know where we are, just tap somebody on the shoulder. Here, Sarah. Joey, can you help Sarah?
No, I don't know where
You know where we are. The first one on the page is namely and discerning God, or moreover. See moreover? So then the bottom right of that page, this chunk here. The page says moreover, bottom right. Is everybody with us? Yeah? No. Right here.
Thank you.
There we go.
dealing with old people here.
ואהבת השם כאש בוערה בליבו כריש בשלהבת. And we have a mic in the room, so it should hear us. Maybe just speak a little louder. We'll see how it's working.
There will also be born of contemplation a love of God, burning in his heart like a flame, like fiery flashes.
So not only will Chokhmah, Bina, and Dat flow according to what Nefesh Elokit is inspired to think about or cogitate on, but also Dat will ignite, so I'll have feelings about it. Right? I can have just information that stays academic, that stays cold, or I can care about something. Right? Like we said many times, if I hear that somebody won the lottery, wonderful, that's nice information. If I hear my wife won the lottery, woohoo! Right? Suddenly something different's happening. Right? So that's the difference of dot. If there's no dot, it's just cold information. You can learn all the information you want, you won't feel a thing without dot. But with dot, suddenly, boom. Chesed and Gevurah are awake, they're moving, they're flowing, and now other things can happen. I have energy that's added to the intellectual antecedent of what I'm experiencing. So that's what happens here. The Divine Soul says, we're going to have a love of God burning in this person's heart, and this type of love, and be conscious that in Kabbalah, states of consciousness are very precise. So we don't just say love, we say what kind of love, what's the name of that love, what's the level of that love. This love is a love burning like a flame, like fiery flashes. So, boom, that kind of love, right? We know it in romance, right? The first time you met your sweetheart, and you just felt that you're thinking about them all the time. You can't get them off your mind. You want to send them everything. They ask you to get them fix them breakfast, and you make a 5-course breakfast. You just want to get closer and closer. It's like a flame, fiery, and it just flares up, right? So aware of that in life, we can also intellectually inspire that towards an abstract reality such as Ein Sof. But it takes meditation. Now we have to actually focus our mind on divine soul-oriented subjects, meditate on it using Dat, and then we can actually ignite that same fire that we would naturally feel, right? When I'm 5 years old and someone brings me a chocolate cake, that fiery flame flashes. It's not hard. When it comes to the physical, I have to educate myself that I can actually meditate on the appropriate subjects, and I can engage that same fiery love towards the Ein Sof, right? Towards learning, towards helping other people. But it takes a system. להיות נחשפה וגם קלטה נפשו בחשיקה וחפיצה לדווקא בו באין סוף ברוך הוא בכל לב ונפש ומאוד.
His soul will thirst and pine with desire and longing to cleave to the blessed
Ein Sof.
Sof. Ein Sof with all his heart, soul, and might, as it is written, and you shall love God, your Lord, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might.
Right, so where is that from? We have a quote here. We recognize this. Ve'ahavta, v'chol le'avcha, v'chol nafshcha, v'chol me'odecha. So here we're getting to something that we can anchor anytime we say the Shema. Now we're going to expand the depth and the meaning of that moment with these three aspects. I can't be commanded to love God, but I can be commanded to focus on something that will cause love to emerge. That's called meditation. Right? So you can't tell your children, you're gonna like broccoli. But you can tell them, you know what? You're gonna try broccoli, right? You're gonna try it once, you're gonna try it next week, you're gonna try it with cheese, and eventually they may get to love broccoli, right? Or not, right? But you can't command them to love it, but you can actually serve it to them in ways that it will taste better and better until maybe the love will emerge. That's what the Ve'ahavta is. It's not commanding us to love God, it's commanding us to meditate on subjects that will allow these three aspects of love to emerge like a fiery flame. And good to know the difference. With all your heart, meaning that it fills this whole battle, the right and left, and flows over to the left. So where the two souls are meeting, you want that whole battlefield to just be overcome with love for God, so that the divine soul is feeling. With all your soul means with every aspect of the soul that we've learned about. So it won't just be an emotion, it'll involve all 10 sefirot, and it will actually flow through all three garments of the soul. Right? So it's not something I just feel when I'm here at temple at a service, it's also something that I think about when I'm driving on the road, something that I speak about when I'm talking to my kids, it's something that I act on wherever I am. Right? So my whole soul, including the entire structure we've learned about, will also flow with this, and love the infinite and be other-centered. And finally, with all your might, me'odecha, that really talks about the aspect of ourselves that is usually subconscious, but that would actually sacrifice our lives not to be separated from God. Right, so later in the book we go more into that. Hi, come on. Apparently we each have within us that central spark that is completely united with God, and if that wakes up, then we would sacrifice our lives rather than be separated from the Ein Sof. Just like we'd sacrifice our lives for our children, and no question, and no thought, and no consideration. The same thing apparently applies when it comes to if someone said, put a gun to my head, can't just more or less bow down to this idol, right? I couldn't do it even superficially. There's a part of me that says, my identity is such, I will not separate from the Ein Sof. That's that third aspect. So all of our heart, all the aspects of the soul that we've learned about, and finally even that super conscious, almost dormant aspect that would even give my life up. All three of those will experience this love like a fire. That's the meditation that the divine soul would like us to do, and that's included later in this book, many meditations that do lead to that kind of a love, depending on what level we're practicing at.
This love will arise from the depths of the heart, that is, from the right ventricle, the seat of the divine soul, emotionally factual as mentioned above.
Right? So the divine soul it has access to the right side of the heart, the spiritual side of our emotional being, and it wants to sit at Temple Israel during services and just picture the word Shema in my mind, picture that I'm hearing from a higher perspective, that I'm lifting up my eyes, recognize that all this is an encounter with the Ein Sof, and suddenly feel an emotion, and it will start in the right side, because that's where the divine soul is comfortable. The brain can meditate on that subject, I can calm myself down and clear my mind, fill my mind with that, and then an emotion will emerge, as it were, on the right side of the heart. It will flare up there. The left side of the heart is still staring at it, going like, no, I want control, right? But the right side of the heart is more comfortable. It will actually, when you're meditating, it will begin more easily, and these kinds of emotions will emerge. שיהיה תוכו רצוף אהבה מלא וגדוש.
The kind of love that the divine soul desires entails that the heart be inlaid with love from within. And furthermore, not only would the love be, as it were, on the surface of the heart, but the heart would also be full, with the love occupying its entire space, as it were, and furthermore, it would be indeed filled to overflowing. That is, the love would overflow into the left part of the heart to affect the emotional faculties of the animal soul which reside there, as the Alter Rebbe continues.
So again, we're not just talking about feeling love in my heart. You know, lots of songs about I have love in my heart is full of love, I love you with my heart. Okay, which side of the heart, right? What kind of love? Is it inlaid? As in, is the heart covered with this love on the inside, or is it filling the heart? Right? Are you doing that extra step where the love is completely filling up the insides of your heart, not just superficially coating it? And then finally, that's the right side of the heart. Can it be so full to overflowing that it finally spills over onto the left side and begins to affect even the emotions of the animal soul itself? Right? Because it's one thing for us to just say, I'm not going to use that language, I'm not going to raise my voice. It's one thing for us to say, I'm not going to eat this, I'm not going to go there, whatever it is, I'm not going to have this relationship and just stop myself, even though I still want to. Right? I wake up and I decided I'm going to do some kind of meditation or prayer in the morning. I want to lie in bed and have a coffee for the next hour, right? I still want that, but forget it. I'm going to get up and I'm going to do my practice and try and improve myself, right? But I still want to lie in bed and have that coffee. But can I love my practice so much, can I love connecting with the Ein Sof so much, that it even spills over, and even those emotions, that self-centered drive itself will say, actually, this is more fun than coffee. You know what, I'm going to get into this too, right? It gets caught up in the enthusiasm. And that is the big secret of self-mastery. Sarah, would you help find the page for me? Thanks. Is that the animal soul wants to do what it wants to do, but when it sees something that is fun and enthusiastic and joyful, it suddenly is like, hold on, this looks like fun. This may be fun. And you can kind of get its attention, and you can get it to turn around. So many systems work like this with the animal soul, or crushing it, or completely obliterating it in some way or another. Here we want to actually get into the same chamber as the animal soul and just be having so much fun with helping other people, with godliness, with meditation, that the animal soul will kind of go, oh, maybe I should try that. Whoa, that's fun also. And eventually the love spills over and can also transform the midot of the animal soul itself. עד שתתפשט גם לחלל השמאלי, לאחפיה, לסטרא אחרא, המים הרים שבה, שהיא התאוות שמקליפת נוגה. This love?
The love would thus inundate the left part of the heart, as well as to crush the sitra achara, specifically the element of evil water in it, in the animal soul, meaning the lust emanating from kilapot noga.
That's some terms there. Let's go on, as mentioned.
As mentioned in chapter 1, the animal soul's element of water gives rise to lust for physical pleasures derived from kilapot noga. Now the animal soul's spirit of lust is the kilapa, counterpart of the divine soul's spirit of love for God. Thus the divine soul's intense love of God has the power to crush the animal soul's lust for physical pleasures.
So a couple concepts that came in here. One was the sitra achara, that's the side of the world that is not holiness, as well as the side of ourselves that believes we have an ego, we have an I, that I'm real and you're real and we're separate. We're not just all somehow raised from this one reality. So that sitra achara, that love will actually crush it. And he uses a term here I'd like to introduce, iskafia and ishafcha. Don't write them down, but these are two terms that deal with ways of dealing with the animal soul. The first one, iskafia, is where you actually just slam the brakes on, emergency brakes, right? You just completely arrest what's going on. You stop it with force, right? Wow, I've been taking whatever this stuff is, and I thought I liked it, and I was just having a party, and now it's ruining my life, and I'm throwing it all away, and I will not touch it. I will not go near it. I will not think about it, right? Do I still want it? Am I still addicted? Yes, but I'm not going to touch it. Just stopping. After however many weeks, when it's out of my system, now I can start to maybe get that energy back and allow it to flow a little, but for now I'm just saying, forget it. Don't touch it, right? That's iskafia. Ishafcha, okay, a year later, now I'm going to groups, I'm helping other people get off of addictive substances or whatever. I have that energy back in my life, and I've redirected it to other sources, right? It's been freed of that attachment or addiction to the point where now I can let that energy flow again. I don't just lock it up. It can actually move and flow back into my life and give me my own vitality back, but use it in a productive way. That's extreme, but here it's the same thing with the animal soul. The first thing that the love wants to do is actually just stop the animal soul from having access to my emotional flows of my soul, and make sure that it's only the divine soul that can. And it's a very forceful motion where you say, no, I'm going to take this one aspect of my life, big or small, and I'm not going to let the animal soul express in any way, right? Strength, that's iskafia, sorry. And then ishafcha is maybe weeks or months later, now I'm not so fixed on that energy, and now I can let that energy move back, but in a productive way, where now the animal soul has said, yeah, I'm going to add my energy to what the divine soul is directing. And finally, he brings up the issue of water. We don't focus on it too much in our discussions, but if you remember, the Alter Rebbe introduced us to 4 spiritual elements, fire, earth, water, and air, and each one, if you like, corresponds to a certain aspect of consciousness. Water, which is the thing that allows beauty and living things to grow, corresponds to pleasure. And so pleasure can be productive or counterproductive. I could have pleasure learning something, or I could have pleasure helping someone in appropriate ways, and that's higher order pleasure of the divine soul. I can have lower order pleasure of whatever kind you like. I like watching TV, I'm going to sit here for the next 4 hours watching reruns, right? It's also pleasure, but it's whose pleasure? It's pleasure of the animal soul. So that's what's called the element of water. And the element of water is flowing through the left and right side of the heart. And here he's saying that the love will flare up on the right side of the heart to crush the water, the counterproductive water that's flowing through the left side. And what that means for me and you is, over the next months and years, if we pick some aspect of our life where the animal soul is directing the flow of water, right? Say, you know what? I could be a better person for other people around me if I wasn't doing this, but I like it. I like this habit. I like this cigarette. I like this TV show. I like this food. I like this way of speaking, whatever it is. We can actually, with this meditation and love, we can overcome and crush the way the water is flowing into my life that way, and eventually redirect it and say that same pleasure that I had with something that was counterproductive, I will now direct to something that is productive, whatever that means in your life. Make sense? You see how it's becoming more operational, something more that you can put into practice. And I hope some of us have started, as we suggested, that one good way to begin this is to create the category of nefesh elokit, nefesh b'amit, divine soul, animal soul, and just notice when each one is thinking, speaking, or acting. Right? Because the sfirot and the midot, that's a bit above my pay grade. I can't look into the sfirot and see anything beyond sort of a sense of inner knowing. But I know what I'm thinking about, I know what I'm saying, I know what I'm doing, right? That's pretty clear. So I want to create a category where I say, which side of my heart is feeling this emotion? Right? I walk into a situation, I start feeling something, immediately I want to put it in A or B. Is it divine soul or animal soul? I start thinking something, I have an inner speech that starts happening in my mind. Who's talking, divine soul or animal soul? At this point, I wouldn't necessarily start to try and direct it in any strong way. Just create that category. It'll be very useful as we are introduced to some of the techniques that come up. לשנותו להפכה מתענוגי עולם הזה לאהבת השם.
The effect of the divine soul on the animal soul's element of water would be to change and transform it from a lust for mundane pleasures to a love of God.
Right, so here he uses the second term, hishapcha. I mean, he says ulahapcha, it's conjugated differently, but the two terms are iskafia and ishapcha. So this is the second version where once you've stopped the animal soul's flow for a while, and now it's calmed down, now you can eventually redirect that energy to the compass bearing of the divine soul. And it's important, because in the end we want to have our vital energy engaged in this. We don't want to become just automatons that are saying, I won't do this, I will do this, no matter what. Eventually you want to enjoy what you do in the Jewish community, what you do in your life. You want to enjoy helping other people, and you want to very naturally have your personality flow into it, right? The animal soul is actually the driver, the source of energy for everything we do. So we don't want to alienate it and destroy it. We just want to stop it from this kind of behavior inappropriately, and then redirect it so that its energy can actually help us in the compass bearing of the divine soul. Now here's a really, really big piece that ties the Tanya to the Vehavta that I try every time I recite the Shema, whether at a bar mitzvah service or privately or anywhere else. I try to really connect this concept with the text of the Vehavta, because it's a constant reminder of this duality that we're learning to engage with. כמו שכתוב בכל לבבך בשני יצריך.
Consider it good, you shall love God with all your heart, which our sages interpret basing themselves on the use of the dual form of the word
Levavcha
instead of
libcha,
which allows the verse to imply with all your hearts, with both your natures, with your good inclination and also with your evil inclination.
Accordingly, you can go on accordingly.
According to the evil inclination, the lust of the animal soul must also come to love God. And this too is part of the divine soul's battle plan. The altar rabbi now describes the specific level of the love of God that accomplishes that.
I heard a few, that's right? This is one of those moments, you think you're reading something that was written 220 years ago, and it's something new, and it's like a new idea. It's a chidush, it's a great dynamic way to master ourselves. Wonderful, right? What a new addition to Judaism. And then he comes and he says, well, look at the story of Jacob and Esau. What was that about? Right? These twins, and the animal, fiery one was born first, but really the academic, spiritual one was really had the birthright, but had to kind of wrestle it back. And what do they represent? And you're looking at the story, and you're saying, this is exactly the animal soul and the divine soul in every aspect. It had to be written with that in mind. It clearly was portraying it. And same thing here. When he says this word, levavcha, you say this is something that was actually an internal truth to our tradition that maybe is merging more clearly here. But she's showing us this. When you said vehavta, you didn't say your heart, you said your hearts. Right? The word that's actually used, levavcha, is a dual form that only really makes total sense in the context of understanding the two souls and the two sides of the heart. Really, it should have been libcha, right? And when we translate it, we say with all your heart, right? Or all your hearts, meaning there's many of us and we have many hearts. We don't say with your two hearts. We don't translate that, but that's what the Hebrew literally means. Levavcha means with your two hearts, with your double heart, right? So when we say love God with all your heart, it doesn't just mean have an emotion. It means, no, not libcha, not your one heart, but understand you have two souls, they're flowing through two aspects of your heart, and you want both of them to love God. Not just the divine soul that wants to do that, but even the animal soul that has to be retrained to do that. You had something to add? No? Did you want to add something? No, you look like you might have. Yes.
And people realize, you know, that Jacob has bargained for the birthright. Everyone blames Jacob as doing something terrible.
Yeah.
How could he do that, you know? So, I don't know, if you apply that to the you know, Bel Alkit, Nefesh Alkit, do we look at it that way? It's hard now not to apply that to those two things. Maybe that taking control is a kind of a negative thing, it seems.
Well,
If you're gonna compare it to Jacob and Esau.
it all depends on why you're trying to take control, right? If you're trying
Well,
to take
I thought so, but,
Yeah.
I mean, when you read that story, it was that
Yes,
Jacob.
for sure, 100%. He looks deceitful. But
Right.
even in his name change, you see, we learned that Yisrael means wrestle with God, but it really comes from sar, from nobility. And the whole message was that the root of Yaakov is deceit, and the root of Yisrael is nobility, and that Esav's angel, who he wrestles with, says, now that you've overcome this metaphor for the animal soul, you won't have to use deceit to get your blessings. You'll be able to get it directly through nobility. And so, yeah, that's how we want to see this struggle. Sometimes you're allowed to trick your animal soul. You're allowed to say, you know what, if you sit and learn for an hour, then you can have a piece of chocolate. And then you learn for an hour and you say, ha ha, another hour first, right? Go ahead, right? As long as you're doing it for a good purpose, as long as you're doing it because you want to grow and improve yourself, you're allowed to trick that aspect of yourself. That's fine.
Does that mean that the end justifies the means?
Many times it does, yeah. Yeah, and we see that often in our
It's a little hard to accept, you know, I think.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe our
I mean,
21st century viewpoint, I don't know.
look, I'll go one step further. The end justifies mistakes sometimes, right? Not just the means, but sometimes I can make an error. I can go into a situation, and I can use my best judgment and focus with my divine soul, and I can try and say, I think this is the right solution for this because I'm trying to help other people. But I'm human. I could be completely wrong. I can make a mistake, and I can make the situation worse. It doesn't mean that was my animal soul acting, right? It doesn't mean that I took a step backwards in terms of my spiritual growth. I just made a mistake. So, okay, so be accountable, apologize, go and fix it. But as long as I'm other-centered in my soul alignment, we're all going to make mistakes, but we're just accountable and we fix it. So yes, the end justifies, as long as it's the divine soul flowing, it actually justifies within limits certain means, and within limits certain mistakes. The main focus of us here is to learn to train ourselves to always be trying to help the people around us, right? Of course, we're going to do so imperfectly.
How do we know that our divine soul is always flowing?
Well, it's not always flowing, right? Sometimes if I'm having an argument with someone, it's my animal soul that's flowing, and I know my divine soul isn't flowing. We're told that it's always there. That's an aspect of faith. And I think if most of us look inside, that sense of inner knowing, we get there's something in there that's beyond just all this stuff, right? But the divine soul is not always flowing. Many of us live much of our lives just in rationalization mode, where the animal soul feels something, and then it takes the intellect and says, this is why I feel this way, and this is how I can get this thing without getting caught, and this is how I can think about it without being guilty, right? And then the divine soul is not flowing. The divine soul is actually held captive in this city, and the other ruler is able to rule the whole city. So that's our job, is to get the divine soul flowing in our thought, speech, and action.
That's this week's Torah portion, and with Yehuda admitting that he was wrong.
Okay, yeah.
It's a perfect example.
Sure.
When he saw the divine soul as opposed to his animal soul.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, when he said, you know, she's right, this is my staff, I was the person, she did it for a good reason, and this, you know, we diverge, but that's a really perfect example of how the means was just the end justified the means, right? Cosmically, we're told, now, this is the last thing, I'll go back to this. Cosmically, we're told, Peretz's line had to come into being, right? And the Sitra Achra and the Klippa, they were arguing, you can't bring, this is going to be King David's line, this is all these holy Jews, you can't do it, it's going to tip the balance of good and evil, has to stay balanced. So the side of holiness in the world said, okay, here's how we'll do it. It's going to look really, really ugly. There's going to be prostitution, and there's going to be, you know, people dying and people spilling their seed and all this stuff. It's just the most morally questionable story. If you don't know it, read it. And that's going to let the other side of the cosmos say, okay, we're going to let this happen, right? Now that it looks this way, it's strengthening us, it's strengthening immorality. Now we get a story about prostitution, the Torah, we're good, right? And so by retreating on the battlefield, the holy side of the cosmos allowed something even greater to come into existence, right? You'd say, how could the holy side of the cosmos allow people in the Torah to do these things, to get something even greater to come in that would ultimately show the whole purpose of good and evil to begin with? So yeah, cosmically, internally, as long as you're focusing on nefesh elokit and you're doing your best, you can fix any errors, right? Where are we? Someone help me out?
Very bottom.
Yeah, so to get back to that, levavcha, that's something I'd really like for us all to impress in ourselves, and perhaps when we're at services, have it be a bit of a focus in terms of meditation, is that we've been saying all along, love God with both your hearts. And that's for a reason. And the text of the Ahavta itself is showing us, and has been for all of Jewish history, that we have two components of our hearts that are the home bases for two souls that are having this battle. And that the whole point is to meditate on subjects and use techniques that allow both of those inclinations to become other-centered and to love growing, being a better person. והיינו שיעלה ויבוא ויגיע למדרגת אהבה רבה וחיבה יתרה ממדרגת אהבה עזה כרשפי אש.
Okay, this transformation of the animal soul's lust to a love of God entails rising to attain to the level of Avaha Rabbah, abundant love, a love surpassing even the level of the powerful love, like fury, flashes, that was mentioned earlier.
והיא הנקראת בכתוב אהבה בתענוגים להתענג על השם מעין עולם הבא.
This level of love is what the scriptures describe as ahava
בתענוגים. בתענוגים. Yeah.
A love which expresses delight. It is the expression of delight in the godliness that is foretaste of the world to come, since man's reward in the world to come consists of delighting in godliness.
So here we have a second quality and category of love. We want to keep track of these, ava b'tanugim. Whereas the first love, a love of like fiery flashes, is more like when you just so are drawn to something and love it that it's almost painful. You feel more and more distant from it. Even the closer you get, you feel the more and more distant because I'm almost there, but I'm not touching it yet. And it just flares and flares. It's almost a painful love. Ava b'tanugim is an entirely different category of love. It's the love where you're delighting in something, right? And it doesn't have that sense of pain and distance. It doesn't have that sense of constantly wanting to reach out with a sense of fiery passion, as more a tranquil sense of now delighting in the nearness of the thing. So he brings us in this chapter quite quickly just to show you what the divine soul would like. When we learn about Ava b'tanugim and the meditations that may lead to it, you'll see that this is a quite rare form of love that only really high-functioning practitioners may experience, and not even a love that we can experience just from our own work. It has to come as a gift from above. So I can describe what it is, but I'd like to bring in the words of Steinsaltz. Here in Opening the Tanya, he describes the difference between the two. Love like flaming coals is not a delight. It is a painful love, an ever-escalating agony. There is beauty and even a sort of pleasure in the pain, but there is a perpetual lack, a dissonance, an ever-increasing tension. Love and delights, on the other hand, Ava b'tanugim, this love, is of the nature of the world to come, which represents a higher plane of reality, a reality in which there is no conflict, in which humanity becomes an integral, harmonious being, whose soul is wholly consumed with the love of God. There is no longer the tension of unsatisfied desire, but the nearness of God to me is good. People stand before God and are utterly satisfied in their love for Him. So this is a very, very high level that one could work for many, many years and still not attain, but that is attainable, is described, It's no longer the love of the fiery, almost pain of separation, which is like a pleasure and a pain. Oh, I want, Sama lecha nafshi, and that sort of burning sense of we really want to get. I feel like I'm thirsty, I'm parched from lack of water, and I'm wanting to get to that well. Versus, I'm at the oasis, I'm enjoying the cool drink of water. It's so beautiful here. There's nowhere else to go, and in fact, there's no more conflict, right? So two very, very different types of love, and we have meditations to at least aim at both of them.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
It says in the world to come.
Yeah.
What is that exactly? Is that a Christian, the Christian thought of the world to come? Or aren't we in the world that God created right now?
Yeah, so Christianity
say.
adopted it, but it's certainly, these concepts are all Jewish, and there's three primary fields here. One is the world, which is what we live in, time, space, and consciousness. Here I am, right? Then there's heaven, Gan Eden, which is where my soul was before I was born and where it remains and returns to after I was born, which is a much higher spiritual vantage point where I can see and enjoy divine light, which I don't see and enjoy if I'm a normal person here. Then there's also the world to come, which is once everybody has done their work elevating all their personal sparks in this world, and the world becomes more and more spirituality and less coarse, eventually the actual physical world experiences a tipping point where no longer is the physical the obvious, but the spiritual is the obvious. So we'd be sitting in a room not thinking, here I am with maybe 20 separate bodies, each of which is a separate being. And oh, wait, are we all part of one light? Yeah, I think so. If we meditate hard enough, we can get that. Just the opposite. We walk into this room and say, godliness, right? Divine light, one being, that's all there is. And if I meditate, I can see there's still separate bodies. There's still some kind of klipa here. But boy, I have to really focus to see the divisions that exist. So somehow the world to come, that's once everyone's done their part, you and me both, and then the world tips over into that state. And there's many ways that it's been tried to describe what that state is, but it's a very, very Jewish concept, whichever one of those lenses you want to put on. Even, if I may add at the end, Reform Judaism has never distanced itself from the concept of Messianic era. So here at Temple Israel, as much as this is not a Reformed text, obviously, we should be very comfortable with the concept that the world itself is heading towards this state called the world to come, where everything is righteous, everything is peaceful, everything is oneness. Right? That's all Jews have always believed that.
Any part of the Gentile community share our idea of two souls, as far as you know?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know. Okay, going on. והעונג הוא במוח, חוכמה ושכל המתענג בהשכלת השם וידתו כפי השגת שכלו וחוכמתו.
This delight is felt in the brain containing chokmah, wisdom, and intelligence, which delights in perceiving and knowing God, commensurate with the capacity of one's intelligence and wisdom. The greater one grasp of godliness, the greater his delight.
So this ava b'tanugim, it is a delight that is felt intellectually and then moves into the heart and creates this type of ava b'tanugim, a love of delight as opposed to a fiery light. So it's centered in a cerebral, meditative wholeness and a sense of oneness with the Ein Sof that then becomes a different emotional flow than, I don't know where God is, I want to see God. It's the opposite almost. Yeah, can we describe it that way? Yeah. Yeah, you can find many texts that you could use to focus on that type of love, for sure. והוא בחינת המים וזרע אור זרוע שבקדושת נפש אלוקית.
This delight is the level of water and seed, that is, light that is sown in the holiness of the divine soul.
Right, so whereas the water in the animal soul was self-centered, I like brownies, this is the water of the divine soul. I'm here to engage with godliness, I'm here to grow, I'm here to help other people, and that sows seeds where now the animal soul itself will come compass bearing.
I missed a word you said at the beginning. This is like brownies? It's not like
Brownies. Brownies. Chocolate cake.
That's what it sounded like to me, and it didn't make sense.
Well, then for me, that's the easiest metaphor for the animal soul, right? I see a plate of brownies.
So you did say brownies.
Yeah, I like brownies.
It just went over my head.
Do you like brownies?
I do.
So there you go, right?
All right.
And I don't generally eat them because I'm like, oh yeah, I really want to be a better person, have more energy to help people around me. It's a brownie. I'm like, brownies, good. Second break.
I just couldn't make the transition from this language.
Yes. So the connection was the water and the animal soul. For me, when I think of a brownie, my water, my animal soul starts to bubble, right? You know, that's an easy, good, non-judgmental connection for me. But fill in the blank with whatever each of our own animal souls has its own focus.
What
Yeah.
about the person that spent time making the brownies for you just to enjoy?
Yes, of course. Look, my grandma may be a perfect tzadika, and she may absolutely have made these brownies, you know, beautifully other-centeredly, and I could still take them, and I could just eat them because I like the taste of them, and I still have to learn from her, right? So, yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of life, is that you can be in a room with someone that has such a different spiritual makeup, and you can share so much. You can even be married to someone with such a different spiritual makeup, and whereas in heaven, you couldn't get close to each other. There'd be no way for you to share anything. Here on earth, you can be right in the same space having a conversation. I could be in the room with a tzaddik, and I'm just this grubbish kind of thing, and yet I can be very close to them and learn from them. It's here on the earth where we can actually bridge all those opposites. It's hard to do it in the spiritual.
Well, if you want to get some religious points, you study Kabbalah and eat brownies.
There you go. Exactly. Eat brownies in order to study Kabbalah. המהפכת לטוב את בחינת המים שבנפש הבהמית, שמהם באו תאוות תענוגי עולם הזה מתחילה.
Which transforms to good the element of water in the animal soul, from which the lust for physical pleasure had previously arisen.
Right, so we can skip the English, we get this. This is the idea. The divine soul would like to fully transform the actual emotions, the actual desire for physical pleasure of the animal soul, and completely transform it so that now that desire is directed just towards whatever the divine soul feels is most appropriate at this time. And keep in mind, if you can do everything described here, you'll become a tzaddik. Right? And a tzaddik is a very rare individual. There's only a few in every generation. So this is what the divine soul would like to do. This is no longer a Beinoni that we're talking about. Right? A Beinoni can't necessarily transform all of their internal desires, all of their attributes and the way they flow, the way chesed and gevura, fire. You can't necessarily transform your entire self-centered inclination, but you can control it. And that's where the Beinoni comes in. Right? So we've gone past Beinoni even here, and we're talking about, at this point, yeah, he's getting there. He'll get to complete tzaddik.
How would you recognize tzaddik?
You can't. From the outside, a Beinoni tzaddik, as you'll see, look the same. So you never know. Someone looking at themselves should always assume they're a Beinoni or a Rasha. But from the outside, you don't know, right? Because somebody may, a Beinoni tzaddik externally look identical. וכמו שכתוב בעץ חיים שרנו פרק ג' בשם הזוהר שהרע נהפך להיות טוב כאמור, כמו יצר הטוב ממש, והסיר הבגדים הצועים ממנו, שהם תענוגי עולם הזה שהוא מלובש בהם.
It is similarly written in Ains Chaim 450, chapter 3, on the authority of the Zohar, that the evil of the animal soul is transformed and becomes perfect good like the good inclination itself, when it is stripped of its unclean garments, meaning the mundane pleasures in which it has been clothed.
And so we're getting to such high levels, let's skip the English. Here he's saying, what the divine soul wants to do is that just desire, just drive on its own is completely neutral. I could want to steal stuff, right? I could want to hurt people. I could want to have inappropriate relationships, whatever it is. I could have a strong feeling of it. Now, the object of my desire is really problematic, but there's nothing wrong with the actual desire itself. That's a neutral drive. So the divine soul doesn't just want to throw the whole thing out or destroy the whole thing. It wants to actually take the object of desire out of the equation and then take back the actual neutral drive so that that drive is now there to follow the divine soul's compass bearing. So all of our batteries that have been spent on other stuff, we want to take them and plug them back into the divine soul side. So that's called stripping it of its unclean garments. Right? The drive of the animal soul is not in itself a problem. We want to have energy. We want to have drive. That's a good thing. We're here for a purpose. Yeah?
Is this go along with the metaphor of like using the elements like fire? Fire can heat your house in the winter, but it also will burn your house down. So the fire itself is kind of neutral. It just depends how it's used.
Exactly. Yeah. Very good analogy. Yeah. So we want to take in that case, you want to take the inappropriate use of the fire, or we want to make sure that it's safely guarded against so that we can be used now productively to warm our house. Right? Very good. But again, this is not something that most people can do. This is an ultimate goal. And someone that does this truly is now a tzaddik. Now every thought they have, every inclination, it's just doesn't need any filtering. It's all other centered. You know. Let's just go on. וכן שאר כל המידות שבלב שהן ענפי היראה והאהבה יהיו לשם לבדו. The divine soul.
The divine soul further desires that similarly all other emotions of the heart, which are offshoots of fear and love, be dedicated solely to God.
So not just chesed and gevura, love and fear, but all the other midot we learned about, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod, malchut, etc., all of that should be in the same category. Now it's reclaimed and it's only flowing according to the divine soul. People have to leave. I want to finish this chapter. Okay, if you got to go, you got to go. I'd like to get to the end and, yeah. וכל כוח הדיבור שבפה המחשבה שבמוח יהיו ממולאים מן לבושי המחשבה והדיבור של נפש אלוקית לבדה.
Also the entire faculty of speech that is in the mouth and the thought that is in the mind be filled exclusively with the divine soul's garments of thought and speech.
And now moving outwards. So now it's not just my internal structure, but the garments of the soul we learned about in chapter 4, they also are flowing according to the divine soul. Right? So that means everything I think, say, and do, that flows other-centeredly. שהן מחשבת השם בתורתו להיות שיחתו כל יום לא פסיק פומה מגרסה.
Namely, thoughts of God and His Torah, in which He would speak all day, His mouth never ceasing to stutter.
So classically, that's what it is. If you want to see what's the most traditional way to do this, if you're learning Torah for its own sake, not so you can make money or be honored, then you know the divine soul is actually thinking, speaking, and acting. Right? Maybe we're more comfortable with other-centered activity in the world, but classically, as we've learned, Torah is chokhmah of the Ein Sof, and so as I express it, I'm actually allowing the divine soul to express.
I don't understand his mouth never ceasing from studying.
That's the person. This tzaddik at this point is just learning Torah all day. Okay, I feel like, I'm going a little over, so let's wrap up here. We'll finish the chapter next week. Good stuff, guys. Beautiful work.
Thank you. We're not on next week? I don't know. Are we on next week?
Next class, whenever it is.
Class. No, we're on next week, the 6th. The 6th round.
What's that?
Whatever you say, boss. Yeah, no, we're on next week.
Good.
Are you streaming tonight's class?
Yes.
Are you?
Yeah.
I know some people ask me about that. But